Okay, so welcome again to physiology. So INICET 2021 session. So I think previously we stopped at something like anatomy of the neuron. So we'll finish it, the anatomy of the neuron. Okay, so we'll finish the anatomy of neuron. So I think we'll just erase it here because we should have the axon here, the continuation of the cell body cyton, that is. Okay. So just we will draw here. So it will be like this, right? So I think this will not be this much, so we'll just erase it up here. Okay, then we have like this, followed by right. Right. So this is soma, this is nucleus, right? See, this is nucleus, right? So these are the dendrites. You see this, these are the dendrites, these are dendrites, right? So this is the nucleus. Then coming to here, this is called the axon hillock. It's very important. It's called a axon hillock, right? Now this one is Schwann cell. We already previously discussed the covering of the axon. The covering or the encircling of the axon in the peripheral nervous system is done by Schwann cell, right? Is done by Schwann cell. Whereas in the central nervous system it's done by oligodendrocyte. It's done by oligodendrocyte. Right? This is nucleus. This nucleus. I will just erase something here. Just erase something here. Okay. Okay. Then this one is nucleus here. And this one is nucleus here. Yeah. So this is called the myelin sheath, which is formed by Schwann cell. Whereas in case of central nervous system, it's formed by which one? That is oligodendrocyte, right? So these are the axon terminals, right? So what are the main features of axon terminal? This is the place where the neurotransmitter release occurs, as well as at the synapse or the synaptical junction, synapse, right? Now coming to the axon terminal, axon is the path for action potential travel. Through axon only the action potential travels, and the action potential propagation is done at the initial segment. Action potential propagation is done at the initial segment, right? Now in the cell body, now this is called the cell body or cyton. This is the axon. The elongated structure is called the axon. Now coming to in the cell body, there are granule-like structures which are actually free ribosomes. They are actually free ribosomes. What is the function of ribosomes? Protein synthesis, right? What is the endoplasmic reticulum, which is stuck with ribosomes, is called, which is attached with ribosomes, is called rough endoplasmic reticulum. Now what these free ribosomes present in the cell body called as Nissel's granules. These are granule-like structures. They are exclusively for protein synthesis. It's as simple as like that. Why? Because the function of ribosomes is protein synthesis. Now coming to if the neuron gets injured, there is a neuronal injury. Now what happens? There is some phenomenon occurs that's called as Wallerian degeneration. Right? What is Wallerian degeneration? The first change or the initial change in the Wallerian degeneration is breakdown of Nissel's granule. Remember, this is a very important point. Breakdown of Nissel's granules, which is called as chromatolysis. So in the neuronal injury, regarding the Wallerian degeneration, what happens is the first change that is brought is the breakdown of Nissel's granules, which is called as chromatolysis. Now always remember the action potential genesis occurs at the, that is the action potential generation occurs at the axon hillock. Axon hillock. Previously we already discussed, right? Now the cyton is approaching like this, and this is the axon. Means I am not drawing the myelin sheet, so leave it up. Now this segment is called the axon hillock. Axon hillock. Now this is the point where the action potential genesis occur. Now we will discuss something about the RMP and AP. RMP means resting membrane potential and action potential. Now the membrane of the neuron is actually selectively permeable membrane. Is selectively permeable membrane. At rest, it is permeable to potassium chlorine. But wait, I will write here. It is selectively permeable. Just wait, I will clear it up. Selective permeable. That means selectively permeable means at rest it is permeable to what are the ions? Potassium and chlorine. But it is not permeable to sodium, calcium plus and phosphate. Calcium and phosphates, right? So these potassium and chlorine are diffusible ions, whereas it is not permeable to sodium, calcium, phosphates and proteins also, proteins etc. Now there is actually presence of uneven distribution of ions all across the membrane. Please remember this, all across the membrane. Now this is what is called as Gibbs-Donan equilibrium. Gibbs-Donan equilibrium. Remember, this is what is called as Gibbs-Donan equilibrium. Now if you just check like what are the ions present inside and outside. For example, you take ICF is present inside, intracellular fluid. Now you take the ECF is present outside, that is extracellular fluid, right? Now you just write it down, you draw a line, and here you take it the cations present in ECF and the anions present in ECF and ICF, right? Now you take both of these. I'll just draw a line here. Okay. Now the cations present in ICF are potassium, so the inside is negative. Remember, the inside of the membrane is negative, right? Now the cations present in the ECF is sodium, calcium, okay, which is positive. Now you may get a doubt like, sir, why negative? Even though potassium, a positive charge is present inside, but still it is negative, and the positive charge present outside, it is positive only. Why, sir? What happens? See, as we already know, a cell at a resting state, the transfer of sodium and potassium is like 3 sodium ions go outside. Remember, 3 sodium ions go. Now I don't need to tell all these things, but still just the basics I am speaking, and 2 potassium ions come inside. Now this is a thesis. This is just a thesis, like the sodium potassium exchange that normally takes place in a resting cell, which keeps the cell in a negative phase only, in a negative charge only, right? So this can be a thesis, so just leave it off. So the inside of the membrane is negative, even though it has the potassium cation. Now inside of, that is the ICF, consists of which anions? ICF consists of which anions? That is phosphate and protein. Is protein positive or negative? It's negative, man. It's negative. And what are the anions outside? That is ECF. That is chloride. That is chloride. Now, due to the presence of unequal concentration of sodium, calcium, which will come inside, and potassium, goes outside, goes outside. Now you understand, due to the unequal concentration of the potassium, sodium and calcium in the outside, that is extracellular, and the potassium inside, this leads to the potassium and calcium will come inside and potassium goes outside due to the unequal concentration. Okay, so sodium and calcium will come inside, that is into the ICF, and potassium will go outside, that is towards the ECF. Now this potential, you see this potential is called as equilibrium potential. Equilibrium potential, and it's generally given by Nernst equation. See, no need to decipher, derive, explain this Nernst equation. I will just keep it simple, right? So Vk is equal to minus 60 millivolts log power 10 to the constant in by constant out. Why I am writing in Hebrew language? Constant out. Okay, so keep this equation as simple as like it is. Just remember this equation. If you are given with the values, you just decipher the values and get the Nernst equation solved. Now I will just tell you some of the equilibrium potential values of some ions. Just remember, you might get a question on this. Now if you take sodium, it is 60 millivolts. Is it positive or negative? It's positive, man. It's positive because it is a positive ion, but still it is present in the outside. So this is the cation. This potassium is the cation which is coming inside and creates positive equilibrium potential. You got my point? Now if you come to calcium, in case of calcium, the equilibrium potential is plus 100 millivolts. Now this is the cation which comes inside along with sodium and it creates a positive equilibrium potential. Now if you take, in case of a chloride has negative 70 millivolts. This is the anion which comes inside and creates negative equilibrium potential. You understand, negative equilibrium potential inside, right? Now you take potassium, it has a negative minus 90 millivolts. This is the cation but going outside, right? This is the cation which goes outside, so obviously it creates negative inside. It goes outside, that is towards the ECF. It goes towards into the ECF. From ICF to ECF it moves, thereby creating negative charge in ICF, that is inside the cell. In ICF, that is inside the cell. Now you understand? Now this is how the balance is maintained. So two positives come inside, right? They try to create positive, so one negative come inside to create negative and one positive goes outside to create negative in the ICF, that is inside. Now coming to the next topic, that is RMP, resting membrane potential. Resting membrane potential, it mainly depends on potassium and chloride. Okay, potassium and chloride. Why? Any reason? previously I already explained one statement. If you remember that one, then you can easily why the resting membrane potential of the neuron depends on potassium and chloride. Why not other ions? Just before few minutes only I said one statement. What is that? Neuron at resting state. We already discussed that the membrane of neuron is selectively permeable. So at resting state only potassium and chloride are diffusible. That means which can move through the membrane, whereas these two are only permeable. So those two are only diffusible, whereas the membrane does not permit, or the non-permeable ions are rest of the things, that is sodium, phosphate, proteins. All these things are non-permeable, so they do not participate any sort of things regarding the maintaining of the resting membrane potential. So the only ions which are diffusible even at resting state of neuron is potassium and chlorine. So that's why the resting membrane potential depends on potassium and chloride ion, because they are the only diffusible or permeable ions at resting state, right? Because the membrane potential itself denotes it is a resting membrane potential, means the membrane potential which is present at the resting state, right? You understood or not? Okay, now we'll come to the next statement, that is, so it is just permeable to potassium and chloride. Since both potassium and chloride have negative EP, yes, we already discussed it, they both have negative equilibrium potential. So the RMP is always negative. So the resting membrane potential is always negative, as the potassium and chloride have negative equilibrium potential. So the resting membrane potential always be in a negative state only. So the main cause of resting membrane potential in both of these, potassium and chlorine, which one is the main factor for the resting membrane potential? That is potassium. It is the main cause of resting membrane potential. Remember, very important. See, potassium and chloride, both of these ions both are actually main causative factors for resting membrane potential. But if you ask me, sir, which ion in the both of this, that is potassium and chloride, in the two of this, which one mainly causes the resting membrane potential? If you ask, means it is obviously potassium. Okay, because if you ask me the reason also, I will tell, because it is the most permeable when compared to chloride ion. This is the reason. Okay, not okay? Okay. So now we will discuss something about the RMP values. Yes, today I will discuss some topics, and most of the people are asking about medicine. Sir, medicine, INICET. Are yaar, why you are so much anxiety to know about? Okay. Today we will discuss some topics regarding medicine. High yielding INICET topics of medicine of the past or previous 5 years. Happy you are? Okay. Today we will discuss. I am about to post a video on medicine INICET previous year. Very important high yielding topics. Remember, they are very high yielding. At least they have repeated for twice or even sometimes thrice also. Okay. So we will first discuss the neurology and we will think about medicine. Okay. So the RMP values, we will just note it down some things. Neurons. What is the RMP value? That is minus 70 millivolts. Now if you ask me skeletal and cardiac muscle, what is the RMP value? That is minus 90 millivolts. Now if you ask me the smooth muscle, smooth muscle or and thyroid, that is minus 50 millivolts. Now if you ask me about RBC, that is minus 12 millivolts. Now if you ask me about rods and cones, what is the RMP value? That is minus 30 millivolts. Now we talk about cochlear hair cells. Who is this? Then it is minus 40 millivolts. Just 1 minute.